Hey, what's up? This is Josh Pomeroy, and I'm making this video on how I make my music, how I do the production, what I use. So I kind of want to just start from a very basic level and just really focus on the things that I do for our music. And if you haven't heard our music, check out underthesurface.us. You can listen to our music there. It's me and my wife, and we write all our songs and we just release them as each track as we get it done. So underthesurface.us, you can check it out. In this video I just want to get going so that you can really kind of see the process. So here's Energy XT. This is the software that I use. Here's the first page that opens up when you launch it, and we're just going to open an empty project. I have created templates, and you can save a default project in Energy XT if there's certain routings or certain effects that you always want to have in there for every production. I find it so quick to be able to really get your projects going that I really don't use a template. Almost every project that I use, I start from an empty project. So we'll do that right now. Nothing in here. There's no effects. There's no buses, no routing, nothing. So let's start adding some stuff. First thing, I always start with a kick. Okay, so let's find a good kick. I'm just going to kind of go through and preview some that I like. I might use a different kick depending on what style of music that I'm going to be making. I'm going to try to do something that's a little bit dubstep, dance, electronic. That's the kind of stuff I like to make. So let's find something appropriate for that. And so just look through my folder. There's the browser on this side. I'm just going to go through and look at some kicks that I've made. Kind of like that one. Let's just drag it in. If you drag it into this inspector panel, it automatically creates a drum sampler. One of the things that I love about Energy XT is its built-in drum sampler. Normally, to get this sort of control over your sounds in a drum grid sort of format, where you can put in blocks and in a rhythmical pattern that will line up with your project tempo, you'd have to use a third-party plug-in like Battery. I just love that this is just built right in there. I can look at the waveform. I can create loop points. I got filters. I got pitch. I can do all kinds of stuff right in here. Put things in groups. So like you've got hi-hats that, a closed hi-hat will close an open hi-hat when that one is sampled. So let's grab a couple of hi-hats. Closed one, and I open one. And again, each one of these samples I can open up in a drum grid, change them. So one thing I'm going to put on here is, just very quickly, I can do this right within the drum sampler without having to drop in another plug-in or anything like that. It's just a high-pass filter. Put the filter in high pass. From the keyboard here, I can preview them. This is the snare. Put a little bit of high-pass filter on that. Okay. First hi-hat. Make sure you can hear that. It's pretty high already. Let's put a little bit on there. Next one. Okay, so another cool thing is I could play them right out on here and record a beat in, That was horrible, but you get the idea. Another thing you can just do is create a clip by double-clicking. You get a clip. I'm just going to put in a kick on the first beat of each measure. So I've got kick, and then the third beat I'm going to put a snare. One thing about dubstep is you've got these really big, punchy hits that are spread kind of far apart. Next thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to set my tempo to 140. You know, every project you're going to make, you're going to want to work that out however you want to do it. Dubstep normally is, not that there's anything normal about dubstep, but 140 is kind of a common tempo for dubstep. So let's just hear how that sounds with the kick and the snare. Alright, a couple things I want to do. This snare, it sounds good, there's kind of a lot of body to it already, but another thing is I can just continue tweaking these samples to really create a good kit. Like all together the drums sound good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of EQ on it. There's, again, Energy XT, this is all built-in stuff, so if you get a copy of Energy XT, you can do all of this. Get some good samples, get a good sample CD, or find some online to download. You can get some I have mine on underthesurface.us. I've got a few sample packs on there for free. So this snare, let's add a little bit more punch, more body to it. I'm going to put this EQ3 it's a peak EQ, so I'm going to put let's see here, about 150 hertz. Let's see how that sounds. Start turning the gain up. So I'll go through and really tweak each individual sample the way that I want to get everything sounding really punchy, and then I can mix everything as well together. So maybe I'll take the hi-hats down a little bit, and I can just take them down in volume right here, and put in maybe a open hi-hat here. I'll put these two in a group, the open and the closed. I'll put in a few more here to get something quickly going, and then see how that sounds. Alright, next thing I'm going to do, drum processing. I can take this whole track now and run it through other effects. One that I'm loving right now on drums, especially for you're getting a nice big punch and a little bit of that soft distortion on the drum track, making everything sound really nice and fat, is Camel Crusher. It's a free plugin for both Mac and PC, so all your Mac guys out there, you can use this too. What I'm just going to do in this, and turn the master all the way up, take the compression, this is just the initial setting, which is called Annihilate, and then I'm going to take the compression down, maybe just to about 1/3, take this distortion all the way out, but I'm going to leave it on. So this plugin has a distortion, a filter, compressor, and then your master gain. So there's a lot of ways that you can really tweak the sounds. For instance, if you wanted to put a low-pass filter over your drums and do like a filter sweep with your drum track, you can just do it with this one plugin. Incredible. I like the efficiency. So get Camel Crusher, and you can use this in other digital workstations too. But I love Energy XT. Alright, so here's what we've got now. So everything has a nice big punch to it. Next thing I'm going to do is you can tab over your tabs up here. This is your tracks view. I can go to a modular view, and this, you can see the basic building blocks. Here's my sequencer, audio out. You can really create some crazy stuff in here if you want. I'm going to go to the mixer view. So here's my master here and my drum track, all coming from one channel. I'm going to add a group, which is like a bus, rename it drums, and then route that drum track we just created to the drums, and turn the drums down just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is give it a little bit of trim. This may seem weird, but I love that Energy XT has it's got a trim function, or like the gain, on the top of an analog console, and this will actually give it a little bit of that nice overdriven sort of feel without mangling the sound. It's just a great way of adding just a little bit of soft distortion. I love it. And then this way I can also route other things. If I want to put more percussion through this same drum bus, put my crashes through there, so it all kind of blends together and sounds a little bit like it's, all one instrument. I also like to put kind of a high shelf EQ on it, just to bring out some character of the highs. And so I'll do that. Just put a couple of dB just on the high shelf. Alright, then I'll go back to the sequencer view. Once you really get your drums sounding the way you want, I mean, this is really kind of showing you more than just the basics. So you could just continue creating your song with just a basic beat. This is really showing you some tweaking and things that you can really dial in, and we might come back to some of this a little bit later. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's go to the next instrument. And what I like to use next is a bass, and just get some kind of melodic groove going. So we'll use one that I like a lot, and it's Toga Audioline. They make some great stuff. It's Bassline. It's very, very simple monophonic synthesizer, and it's got a very basic starting patch, which I like for dance music. So the only thing I'm going to do, we're going to create a sound here, create our own patch. I'm just going to take down the portamento a little bit, and I'm going to put in another oscillator, some pulse oscillator. Kind of thickens it up a little bit. We'll take the volume down, rename this bass, and then I'm just going to groove on this a little bit to see if we can come up with something interesting. Maybe it'll be one note, I don't know. So we've got a bass line going on, a bass groove. We might change this later on. Here's what we got so far. Okay, that's good enough. We can move on to the next thing. Maybe to help kind of give it more of a feel, a swing, a groove, we'll bring in a loop. And I've got several loops, stuff that I've made, some from Loop Packs. Kind of like that one. You can just drag it in. Now, you can choose the resample mode. So you could do like a stretch, time stretching, or we could do repitch, and that's what I'm going to use for this one. Sometimes I like the character that you get when you repitch something rather than stretching it out. Sometimes I like that kind of grainy sound when you stretch something way beyond what it should be, or its original tempo. Similar, you get a different kind of character when you repitch it. So here's what we got now. And just because this is a full loop, so it's got kicks and snares and everything in it, and I don't want it to compete with the drums that we put in, so I'm going to put a high-pass filter on it. Go to my filters, high-pass filter, and then just solo it and begin taking it down, just so I get rid of all the kicks and a little bit of the snare. Okay, that's pretty good. So now it should fit a little bit better with what we've got. The other thing I'm going to add is a plugin called G-Clip, and there's several plugins like this. It's basically a limiter, and what this plugin does is basically just chops off the peaks of the audio that's running through it, and it's really cool. It gives you a little waveform view when you play this, so I'll solo it and then so you can adjust the clip amount and then give it some makeup gain and a little bit of softening if you're getting too much distortion out of it. So that's good enough for the loop. What we should do now is work on kind of that classic, that wubby bass. What I like to use for this one is it's called Electro. Again, it's Toga Audio Line. Pretty simple synthesizer. It's got 3 oscillators. One is just a sub oscillator, so we got oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and then you can adjust them out of sub, which is either saw or a square. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the basic patch, which again is kind of a real basic bass. What we're going to do is turn up the FM on oscillator 2 to about halfway, put it on sync, put it on pulse, so it's a pulse oscillator. We're going to turn up put the first oscillator on pulse as well, and then we're going to detune these. So in the fine tuning, I'm going to make this one kind of flat, and then make the oscillator 2 a little bit sharp. Makes it a little fatter, a little wider. Now we're getting that kind of metallic-y, not Metallica, but that sort of metal, transformer sound. Next thing is the LFO. We're going to adjust LFO 1, make sure it's set to the cutoff for the destination, and just give it some intensity. And then we can change the sync mode or the sync rate to something that's going to sync with the tempo. I like to use this 1/8 triplet. Okay, so now we're getting that really wubness going on there. Alright, so let's see what a good note would be. And we're just going to put in a couple of those. And what I like to do is when I get something that I like that goes along with the song, is then render it down to audio, and then you can really play with some stuff there and make some things really crazy. So that's what we're going to do. I'll just record in a couple of notes. Alright, good enough. Now we need some distortion. For that I'm going to use a multi-band distortion, so I'm not distorting all the bass, I'm just distorting specific frequencies that I want. And Delta has a free distortion, multi-band distortion called Delta Force. We're going to put that on there, see what that gives us. Oh yeah, it's starting to sound good already. So I won't go too far into this multi-band distortion. Just so you know, if you're going to want to create a nasty dubstep bass line, though, you're going to need some distortion. So find a good distortion. I like the multi-band one because I can leave the low end of it mainly intact without distorting it too much, and distort some specific frequencies that really kind of bring out that character of that grimy, hard bass line. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chop out these notes that we created here. And I'll tell you why in just a second, but I'm just going to chop these just where the MIDI that we recorded is. So I've got these 3 clips here, these 3 notes. The first one, we're going to select it, and we can solo this to see how it sounds. Alright, I can hit Control B on the keyboard and bounce that down to audio. So I'm going to bounce it down to audio, a wave at 16 bits, at stereo, and there we go. Then I'm going to select the next one, open up my plugin, and I'm going to change this sync rate. And let's do like maybe a 1/4 triplet. Okay, and then Control B, bounce that one down to audio. So we've got these different, we get the same sound, but it's that LFO is working at different rates. And that's really kind of what gives dubstep the real interest, is that the bass line is always changing, that LFO is changing that cutoff filter and at different rates. The last one we're going to do same thing again, changed again, maybe something really long, maybe one measure. So 4 beats, it's gonna modulate. Okay, so make sure that LFO is on trigger or retrigger so that it triggers every time you hit a note. Okay, so I'm gonna mute that software synthesizer in the track, so then I've got these 3 pieces of audio, and I'm just going to move them up to the same track and hear what that sounds like. So I've got fast, medium, slow. So each one of these pieces, you know, will kind of correspond to where they fit into here in the song. So here's what we got now. Now you might wonder, you know, why do I do this? Why don't I just use the original MIDI and use the synthesizer? Well, you can. You can definitely do it. This is just the way that I do it. I like to kind of have more flexibility with the audio. So create something that I like, leave the instrument in there so they can always go back to it and create more sounds, bounce them down to audio, and create these little, you know, blocks of very interesting sounds. I can also put these audio clips on different channels so that I can apply different effects to every single one. So every time you get this note, it's changing constantly, and that's again gives it the interest throughout the whole song. So so again, that's just the way that I do it. And I'll just delete the MIDI, and then let's go back to the mixer. Get rid of some of these audios. We don't need this one. This one, let's rename this bass one Wub Bass, and then let's create a bass group or a bus for a bass. Let's call it bass. So we might have other instruments that we want to route to this bass group or bus. So we can do that by creating a new group. We call it bass, and another thing that can create interest is, you know, bring in another instrument, a different synthesizer, maybe a completely different plug-in that's playing a little bit different bass line. So we've got 2 bass lines already that kind of go back and forth. They're playing different parts with different sounds, so it's kind of creating this interest. Another thing that we want to do is kind of separate those sounds a little bit more, especially if they're having sounds that are playing at the same time. So we have a nice big full sound, but they're not competing with each other. So if you got one bass, maybe use it as a mid bass, and like we did that multi-band distortion, so we can really bring out some of these grungy mids of that bass, and then have the other bass playing more of the sub low end frequencies. And then we're routing them all to the same bus so that it still all sounds like it's one instrument, just changing all the time. So we'll route these to the bass bus, route my audio to the bass as well, and we're going to use one plugin that I like to use a lot, another Toga Audio Line plugin, Tube, and it's another kind of soft saturation, analog warmth sort of console compression model, and it has this nice little amp feature on it. So I'm going to leave the amp on, which kind of again dirties up the low end, but in a really nice musical way. And then I'm just going to turn up the drive to 50%, and it really helps putting some sort of effect on your group channel or your bus, especially if you want to make all those sounds kind of really sound a little more musical. So things that are good for that are like Tal Tube, vintage saturation. PSP's Vintage Warmer is really good for that. I know, a lot of guys that use that, and they'll put that on even their master channel to get everything really glued together. Multiband distortion or multiband compression, would be good, or just a compressor. Something like that's really gel everything together. So this is a really gentle plug-in, and it affects the audio subtly, but it really helps bring everything into kind of a one big block of sound. So we got that on there, and then we got both of these basses. This first one that we did, and then this one that we rendered down to audio are both going through that. Another thing we're going to add to this wub bass is, again, we're going to put in Camel Crusher on this one, and we're going to using it more, putting a little bit of distortion in it, just a little bit of tube distortion, a little bit of compression, and then we're going to use this for the filter, and we're going to put in some automation on the filter. So we'll go to the Camel Crusher, and we'll automate the filter cutoff, and so that when these notes come in, they're going to be kind of filtered in. I'll show you what I mean here. Like so. So this filter's got a little bit of resonance on it, and we're going to filter it in and then kind of filter it down on the next note, and kind of going back and forth. Again, creating more interest every time you have this real big massive sound. Okay, so all together you've got Alright, so from there you can add more synths, maybe kind of a more lead, add some high stuff. This is a great kind of you've got four bars. You can really kind of start arranging, and kind of start pulling things in and out, adding some more sounds, putting in your effects, some good transition effects. But it's enough to really start kind of writing too, and that's kind of the way that we work. We'll get something, a nice loop, a groove that we can kind of start, building a melody on top of, or seeing how lyrics fit in with it and that kind of thing. So there you go. Hope that's helpful to you. And Energy XT, check it out. UnderTheSurface.us. Check out our music. Thanks for Toga Audioline. Camel Audio. A lot of these guys that make great plugins. Energy XT itself comes with some great stuff built in, so check it out. It's great for making music, really easy, gets you going really fast. UnderTheSurface.us. This is Josh Pomeroy.